Welcome to the Gearbox Podcast, where we dive deep into the dynamic world of automotive repair and ownership. I'm your host, Jimmy Purdy, an experienced technician turned shop owner with a passion for sharing insights, stories, and conversations with industry leaders. This is the Gearbox Podcast. Yeah, the meetings is I guess what they call it. What does everybody call that? Like the group process, right? Is that kind
Yeah,
of similar? But do you do
yeah.
it with everybody else?
No, so I do it'll be just me and, like, one of the other employees that I have for my company that'll go, like, we
Oh,
don't bring, like, all the members type deal.
I
Um,
see. So you
yeah.
do an actual in-person, personal visit to see how it goes, and that's before you even start your whole process.
Yeah, I mean, it's within a month to 2 months, so, like, we have somebody that just signed up last week, and we're going to see them the 1st week in December, so it's about a month and a half out. So we'll have a few, like, little calls with them in the beginning and just kinda do some surface level stuff, and then once we go to the shop is when we really can dive into operations and systems and marketing and sales and just cleanliness in the shop, everything.
Right. Let's roll it back just a minute and see what's your background? What got you into the coaching and wanting to help on that side of it?
Yeah, so I've been in the automotive business since I was 18, and I always wanted to train and even help people before that. When I was in school, I was actually in ROTC in high school, and for 2.5 years of that, I was actually the trainer for ROTC, so training people and helping people and stuff like that. It's kind of always been like in me. Um, And I got into automotive business, started working at a used car dealership originally, and became the manager of the used car dealership. Left that dealership, got into service, and then became a store manager at a franchise company that had 25 locations. Before I left them to get into like the independent area, I was doing training for the whole company. So all 25 stores, I was doing sales training and everything. And I loved it. I mean, obviously I like making sales. I like, working with customers and achieving numbers and stuff like that and fixing things. But it's a lot of fun to be able to go in to a business and see the things and analyze the things that are, failing and not doing well and help make them better. It's like super fulfilling. And then at the same time, you're able to, have make somebody's business and life better.
Right.
You're not just
You
them, but their employees
you sound
also.
like a numbers driven kind of guy. Was there any sort of technician where did you ever actually work on the floor? Or is it more just numbers?
So I did work on the floor. It was a couple of years that I was working on cars. It was mainly when I first opened my shop, though. So I had my shop for 10 years. So when I opened the shop is when I was really fixing cars and writing service at the same time. But numbers are really kind of one of the biggest things that I was involved in.
Was that because you saw your biggest changes out of watching the numbers, or because what exactly pushed you away from the? Because that's the hardest struggle, right? Everybody starts as a technician, they open a shop, they want to do this, so and it's so hard for everyone to want to get away from touching the cars and
Yeah,
focusing on the business. Like how did that transition for you?
yeah. So I mean, obviously, in the beginning for the first, couple years, it was like I was fixing cars all day long, right? And I started to realize that, I could bust my butt, for 15 hours a day fixing cars, and that helped me that day. But it didn't. I realized that it didn't help me long term. And the only way to help myself long term, my business long term, was to take a step back and start working, on it instead of in it. And that's really what started getting me focused on the numbers and and the sales and the operations and all that type of stuff. I also saw the movie with Michael Keaton, the founder. Have you seen that movie?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
With the big, and that really kind of sparked something in me where I started really analyzing systems in the business and how things are run.
kind of like the E
After I
Myth.
watched
Like
like
read
that portion
if
of
you
the
read
movie
the
where
E Myth book, same thing, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And yeah, well, I look at repairs the same way too, as far as trying to make it as efficient as possible. I
Yeah,
just think it's really difficult for most to like sit at the desk and find something useful to do with themselves, right?
yeah,
Instead of just getting up and like, what? I just gonna go fix his car, right? Because it's
yeah.
always the default. Was that a hard process for you, or was it easily like once you got away, you really hook, line, and sinker, and you realize I need to spend my time in the office, and you made sure you stayed out of the shop?
So in the beginning, it was hard. In the beginning, I would. I would say, all right, this is what I'm going to do today. I'm going to be in the office. I'm going to be focusing on, getting this procedure in place or getting this system in place or, just focus on sales or whatever it is. And then I would find myself, the day would start going, I'd be on it. And then all of a sudden it's like a magnet pulling me back into the shop. And the next thing you know, I'm going home at the end of the day and my dress shirt is like filthy. I can't even tell you how many white shirts I have that are covered in oil. So, but yeah, it took some time. I mean, and then once it was really a self-discipline thing though, honestly, making sure that, I told myself, hey, like I need to stay here. Like where am I going to make the biggest difference in my business? Is it going to be in the shop? No, it's not. It's going to be, inside the office, paying attention to what's going on, helping everybody else see, learn how to run the business.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I was trying to dig for some advice for those listening that might be in that
Yeah.
situation that's like really tough. And I
Yeah.
think I think you kind of nailed it with like taking one task at a time, right? Like even if you're only
Yeah.
spending 30 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever, just make
Yeah.
sure you dedicate that morning time or whatever time to at least get in there and do something.
Yeah. Yeah. The 100%, and the biggest thing is, try to be like what I found is I tried to become self-aware of what was going on, like what I was doing throughout the day. Like I would stop like every half hour, 45 minutes, I would stop and think about like, all right, where are we at right now? Like what's going on right now? And then a lot of times I started catching myself straying away from what I needed to do, being out in the shop. And then I was able to wrangle myself back in. But like I had to get up in the morning and go to work and say, all right, this is what I'm going to do today, but I'm going to stop throughout the day and, reevaluate where I'm at and then drag myself back in, because it's almost like a focus thing, right? You lose focus and then you end up, just going back to what's comfortable,
Yeah.
So you have
Oh,
to do what's
you think it was like a stress reliever too? Do you think like getting out there and like fixing a car felt like you accomplished something? So you're like, all
oh
right,
yeah,
I'm
100%,
worth
man.
something now.
Yeah. Yeah,
Trying to make
100%.
yourself feel worthy.
Especially when, the biggest thing and in hindsight, years ago, it seemed like I was doing the right thing. But as time went on and I started analyzing things, I realized I wasn't. But like, it was such a huge stress relief when a technician runs in and goes, the spark plug in this Ford broke off and I'm using the tool and I can't get it out. And then you walk out there with the spark plug tapper tool and you get out in 2 seconds, you hand the spark plug, like, all right, you're good. Like it feels like it's like rewarding, but it at the same
Um,
time, you could have been doing so much more than that time.
I'm not the God, but I'm a God, right? Like,
Exactly. Exactly. It doesn't matter if it was like a entry level tech and he's like, I can't balance these tires. And he's been sitting there for an hour and a half trying to balance one tire. You walk out there, spin the thing one time, throw a weight on it, tap it, spin it again. It's zero all the way around. He's like, what the heck did you just do?
yeah, I rule this stuff, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like
But
mic
like you
drop.
said, I feel like that was just a pat for your on your own back, just like stroking your own ego instead of
Yeah.
focusing on what you should be doing.
Yeah.
It's
You
tough
have to
though.
do what's uncomfortable. It's, and for a lot of people, trying to run the business is uncomfortable. But then as you do that and you get more comfortable doing it and you see the things that need to improve, it starts becoming second nature and then you're comfortable doing it, you know?
Yeah.
And that was I guess it was a little bit of a struggle in the beginning, but as time went on, I mean, my shop, we went from in a course of about a year and a half doing about 35 to 40,000 a month to maxing out at 290,000 in revenue.
Wow.
So
That's
it's
impressive.
about 18 months it took to do that.
That's quite a ramp.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
some serious change there. And then
Yeah.
and then moving from actually running your own shop to getting more into the facilitating side, what was that push like and why did you do that?
What as far as like coaching and training and stuff like that?
Yeah, it sounds like you had a pretty successful shop, and
Yeah.
I don't know, the thought of training others that don't want to listen to what you're saying sounds just as stressful as moving from the floor to the office in your own shop. So how did that
Yeah.
go?
So I did training for for like I said for years. I was with a company for a little while doing training and I loved it. Teaching like webinars and doing some in person stuff and it was a lot of fun. And I would always a lot of times when I first started doing everything on my own, I would try to just get back into the shop and then do things even after I wasn't involved in the shop anymore. The new person who's involved in the shop, I was trying to like always be involved, which was a struggle. Same thing like going from being like out in the shop as a tech to, going into the office.
Right.
But really, I just I buckled down. I told myself, I'm going to help X amount of people. And, I said, this is what I'm going to do. And I sat down and started doing it and started talking to people. And, I was offering people advice for free, in the beginning, because it wasn't really so much about the money for me as it was about helping make a difference, and then, yeah, you're right. There's some people don't listen. I mean, you can have somebody that you can yell at until you're blue in the face, or and they'll sit there and tell you yes, 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 I'm going to do it, and the next thing you know, 6 weeks later, still haven't done a darn thing, and that does get frustrating sometimes, a little bit discouraging. But when it's the same thing with anything. If you stay consistent, keep doing the same thing over and over again to try to make sure that you do what you can for that person, eventually somebody's going to be able to get something that sticks. And once I got the first few people that went from doing like 40 grand in a month to had a month that popped 100,000, or we're not even just about money. Or one guy that I've worked with, he was working 70 hours a week, and then now he leaves at like 3 o'clock every day. And for him to be able to say, hey, listen, me and my wife are in the best spot we've ever been in our personal life, because I don't, he's like, I'm making more money than I was making, by a little bit, but I'm also enjoying my life now, instead of just making more money and, working a million hours,
Yeah,
and
he met his level. He met his level of success,
yeah,
whatever your
exactly.
success wants to be, right?
Exactly, yeah, because it's not just money. I mean, for some people, it's hey, I'm making X amount of dollars a month or a year already, and I'm happy with that. But I need to figure out how to make it to where my business doesn't rely on me. Because there's some shops where like they can make like a lot of money. They could be netting 50, 60, 70. I've seen shops netting like almost $100,000 a month, like $300,000 shops. That the owner is like the main cog that keeps it running. And that's in a lot of people's situation. They'd rather make half the money and not have to work as much. Um, but
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, seeing the difference that made for people is what really kind of dragged me in to be able to make sure I could keep doing it and focus on it,
That's
and,
cool.
and
Yeah,
not focus
I
on other
think you have to be to be a facilitator. I don't think you can do it all just for the money, right? There's just too
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
And speaking of not listening, what and everyone has like their story is the most unique. Their story or their situation is like the most unique, and their area or their demographic is the most unique. Right? You've probably heard it all, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
there's no way that's going to work for me. So, what is a trend that you see the most of when someone comes on as a client for you? Is there something that like you hear like almost every time from somebody?
So, I mean, as far if it's somebody that's struggling with sales, almost every time the thing is, and it doesn't matter what their demographic is. It doesn't matter if it's a super demographic that has like a $20,000 average income, or one that has $120,000 average income. It's, oh well, the problem with the sales is the no matter what we do for marketing, customers don't come in, and they don't want to buy. The customers don't want to buy. It's not us. They don't want to buy. And I have a guy that I'm working with right now, and the demographic in his area, literally, I mean, I put it side by side with where my shop was, and the amount of people in his area in a 5 mile radius of his shop is within a few thousand of the amount of people that are in mine, like a very, very small percentage. And then it's a very close amount of the average income as well. I mean, even down when we looked at the penetration reports, even down to the average age, it's very, very similar. And he's doing like $100,000 a month, and he's got a very big facility. And he was like, yeah, he's like, it's just, he's like, the thing you have to understand in my area, he's like, it's just the money. The people don't make, they don't make a lot of money. And, he's like, I can't, sustain an average ticket this high. And the quotes are low. The average quote on the vehicles are low. And I told him, I said, so, and just for reference, I mean, they have like a $400 average quote on the vehicles, so they're not finding a lot of work on the cars. And I said, so let's look at my shop area. And this is, our average quote was double or triple yours. First off, I said, but so you're trying to tell me that because your average income is lower, that you guys aren't finding work on the vehicles? I was like, if anything, it should be the opposite. You should find 3 times as much work because the cars are
That's
older.
true. Yeah.
But I mean, I think that that's the biggest thing, is a lot of people just say that, because of my demographic, or, because of the area that my shop's in, the customers aren't buying, when they're struggling with sales. They don't want to look at their processes, or look at the way the advisors are presenting the work, or, look at the fact that when the customer walks into their shop, it smells like cigarette smoke and it's filthy in there, as to why the customers aren't getting their vehicles repaired. And, they just think it's the customer, which isn't the case. 9 out of 10 times, it's something going on in their operation.
What do you think that is that they're looking from you then? Like, because it seems like in those situations, they already know, right? Like that's not gonna work. So, do you ever try to think about, well, what is it that you want me to do for you then? Like, do you want me to pull a magic, a bunny out of the hat, right? Like, do you think I have a magic trick? And when you
That,
get in deep and you just say, "Hey, look, you need to just work on your sales," and you're like, and they say, "No, that's not gonna work." Like, well, what do you expect me to do right now? Do you, do you ever have
that's
those thoughts and you're like,
yeah.
what could you possibly expect me to do right now?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, they'll get on the phone and they'll be like, "All right, so this is what I need. This is where my shop's at. This is where I want to be. What do I need to do?" And I'm like, "You want me to just tell you right now what you need to do? It doesn't work that way." Like, I think a lot of people, and I don't think it's like intentional. I just think because of how much you have going on in the shop on a daily basis as an owner, because you're trying to wear so many hats, you get overwhelmed, and then you're struggling, and then when you're struggling, it gets even worse. People think that they can just pay a marketing company or a coach or a trainer or whatever it is. I mean, all these different companies out there that offer services to shop owners that legitimately can help increase business. People think that they can just pay that one company and then all of a sudden all their problems go away. And it's
I feel
it's
that.
interesting.
I
It's not the
commend with
case
that.
though. It's not the case. I mean, there is no magic bullet to it. I wish there was, but there's not.
It's like, the same with vehicles when they go
Yeah,
sideways, right? And everyone's looking
yeah,
online, try to find, what the diagnostic is. What part do I need to replace? It's like, doesn't, right? It's almost the same thing, right? But that's what your brain wants to do. Your mind wants to find the easy way out, right? So
yeah.
I'll put this code in. I'll ask a couple of my buddies on these forums, and maybe they'll just tell me what part that they normally replace with that. And I'm sure you deal with the same thing. What part do I need to fix in my business to make money, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, man. That's literally what they say. It's like, and I have to explain, and that's part of the reason why when I work with somebody, and we don't try to work with a million people. I mean, we're selective to an extent on who we work with as far as the training goes. But when we work with somebody, like we tell them, like, listen, we need to do the shop visit. Like that's so important because I'm not going to just pull up a book and just start training out of a book and say this is what we need to do. Like we need to look at what's going on, and then we can really say, okay, well, hey, this is the case with this. I mean, and it's like advisors and joke all the time about how saying customers always lie about what's going on with their cars. I mean, it's and I don't think it's on purpose or whatever or vindictive, but they just say customers lie, right? And honestly, I'll say shop owners lie, but it's not on
All just
purpose.
people
Yeah,
just
yeah,
lie, right?
it's just people. I mean, you'll have a business owner on the phone and they'll say, hey, this is going great with this, whatever it is. They could say, things are going fantastic with a specific process in their shop. And then, you go to the shop and you look at it and be like, dude, what were you even talking about? Like, it's not even close to going good. Like they'll sit there and say, oh yeah, we're getting cars in and out right away. No cars are piling up. And then all of a sudden you go back in their shop and there's like in the back parking lot, there's like 6 cars that have like, trees growing through the side of the wheel. They've been there for like 2 years. You're like, dude, what are you talking about? You haven't even diagnosed this car in 6 months.
Well, then it's all the exceptions. Well, it's because that one has this and this one I'm waiting on, and that one Johnny took
Yeah.
off, and this was like, and they all have their own little private
Yeah.
excuses, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's always an excuse, and I don't want excuses. I want solutions. You know what I mean?
I like it.
Everything has a solution to it, and this you might not always like the solution, right? And the solution is not always going to be easy. It's not like okay, it's fixed, but like we need to find solutions to the problems. Why we're not making sales, why we're not getting car count in, why customers are leaving us bad reviews, whatever it is. It's not the customers are jerky left you a bad review. 99% of the time, somebody left you a bad review because you did something wrong or there was a miscommunication or something. Let's figure out
Absolutely.
why and solve that problem, not just get
I've
pissed.
recently just recently really started to appreciate, um, those negative reviews, right?
Yeah.
Because they're giving you really, really valuable information, right? And some of
Hmm.
it's just blowing smoke up your ass, right? Like some
Yeah.
of it's like it's way off base. But I mean, for the most part, for someone to like take time out of their day and say, "Hey, I didn't really like this or whatever," like most people won't tell you that, and you got to pay. Like people pay you to come to their shop, tell you what's wrong, right? So to
Yeah.
look at it from that aspect is like you're getting free feedback,
Yeah.
right? And most of the time, if it's positive, I think like a positive review is kind of, it's not always 100% honest. Like, like of course they like the service, right? But it's like it's a little bit of fluff, right?
Yeah. Oh
Like
yeah.
the real value comes from the negative side.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I,
think.
I agree. I mean,
I think.
I'm gonna say this, but I'm gonna expand on afterwards. Like I love when I would get a negative review. And it's not because it's a negative review, it's because that's an opportunity to figure out what's wrong, but then also an opportunity to talk to that customer and say, hey, what can I do to make this right? Because the customer that you piss off that leaves you a 1-star review, that you turn around and fix their problem and make them happy, that customer is a customer for life. And they will brag about you and say the most amazing things about you than any customer that's ever left you a 5-star review before, in my opinion. Because they could say, hey, listen, these guys are great, but also just, they screwed up once and they like, oh my gosh, can you see, let me tell you what they did. And those customers are literally, I found so many customers that have left us, and I say so many, but I mean, haven't had a million 1-star reviews. I mean, we had like 4.8 stars on Google with like 600 reviews. So, but I had so many customers that leave us a negative review, and then we turn that around, and then they'd be key droppers and just say, "Fix my car when it's done. Fix my car, call me when it's done. Drop the keys and leave." I mean, those were most of our customers that would drop the keys. Were customers that at one point we screwed up.
Do you think it's
Yeah,
like for the positive side, those people are always just kind of waiting for the other foot to drop, right?
yeah,
So like once the other foot drops and you take care of it, it's like, well, what's the worst that's going to happen?
yeah,
They'll take care of me if it does. So you've
yeah,
eliminated that fear, right? Because it's
exactly.
happened, you took care of it, and you moved on. And the people that never
Yeah,
experienced the other foot dropping, right, and like the negative side, they still have that fear, like, oh, what if one of these times they actually screw up? And
yeah,
if that when that in the back of their mind, it's like they could always just go somewhere else because they're kind of
mhm,
they're always a little leery, right?
yeah, 100%.
Possibly, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. You're 100% right. And I have a thing where I talk to people about like I was big on an inexpensive oil change to draw customers, and I know that's super controversial, and a lot of shops hate it. But it's that's what customers need more often than anything is an oil change. And even if you charge a lot of money for an oil change, we don't like no one's going to go retire off of doing oil changes in their shop in their repair shop unless you're like an oil change place. And at that point, the place you're going to make money off of is air filters and wipers and fuel injection cleanings and all that stuff. So, but an inexpensive oil change gets the customers in the door, and then people would say, shops that were kind of against, like, oh, these are bottom feeder type customers. Well, they're not really bottom feeder customers. You did a marketing piece to get a customer in the door, and you're mad and pissed off because they didn't come in for your $20 oil change and then spend $2,000. Well, they need to trust you. They need to come in your shop for X amount of time and trust you. And then once they've come for however many times, it's 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and you've done the oil change coupon for them, and then they're happy. Then they spend money. And I've seen that happen dozens of times. Where a customer will come for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and they don't spend any money and they just get oil changes, and then the advisor would look at the history in the computer and be like, oh, this customer never buys anything. And then all of a sudden eventually the customer's like, these people are honest. They're giving honest recommendations because that's what it is. I mean, it's not like in a shop, we're not just trying to sell people stuff just because, at least in an honest shop. I mean, we're telling them what their car needs, educating them what their car needs, and repairing it. And a lot of customers don't think that that's the case. And then once they trust us, they'll spend whatever it is because they know that we're going to do the right thing by them. And advisors will give up, you know, but they don't need to because it just takes time.
Yeah, I mean, just like you or me going somewhere, right, or anybody else, like you're not just gonna go somewhere and off of one coupon, spend a
Yeah.
bunch of money. Like I mean, that's not what I do. If I see a coupon for a restaurant, I go in and just get the restaurant. I don't buy anything extra, right?
Yeah.
But if I like that discounted meal, it sticks in the back of my mind. I'm like, you know what? That was pretty good. I'll go pay full price for that. I'm kind of craving that, right? So I think, I mean, it just takes time, right? And I'm definitely, I would say, on the fence on the whole
Yeah.
inexpensive oil change. I was definitely 100% against it. Like for a very long time.
Yeah.
And it's just recently it's really starting to be one of those things that you really just start reevaluating yourself, right? Like
Yeah.
every quarter you got to like reevaluate what you're doing with your shop. And
Yeah.
I think it's the pull between the owners operators, and then just like we were talking earlier, once you start really stepping out of the technician role and start focusing more on the business, you start realizing, you know what? That's really not a bad idea because I'm spending $60 per acquisition, right? It's costing me in marketing $60
Yeah.
for every new customer. So why don't I just take that $60 and put that on top of the $120 oil change that we're doing? So it's a $60 oil change, right? I mean, that's what it is. And I'm still breaking even then. So I can even
Yeah.
discount it further than that and still be okay, right?
Yeah.
I'm still at a zero. I'm not making money, but once I get them in here, they see the shop, they see what we're doing here. I mean, I guarantee 1 out of 10 is going to spend $1,500, right? Like, if
Yeah.
we like the odds are, if I get 10 of them in here for a discounted oil change, one of them will spend $1,500 to $2,000, and that paid for the whole campaign.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And it's you can't take just anybody, any shop, and just do a cheap, cheap and expensive oil change campaign and have be successful. There's a lot of things that need to happen. So first off, a waiting customer can't sit in your shop for an hour and a half for an oil change. And that happens a lot in shops. I mean, if you look, I look at negative reviews online for shops all the time, and like one of the biggest things is I went in for an oil change, and an hour later they told me I needed $4,000 worth of work. Well, no crap, they didn't do it. They were there
Yeah.
for an hour and a half. Why are they going to do
Yeah.
any work? So you need to get customers done quick. Have a sense of urgency. So that's number one. You can't try to throw things down their throat. You need to back it up, because especially if they're a first time customer, they're going to be already weary when you're trying to tell them they need $1,000, $2,000 anyway. Use the DVI. Show them. Pull up your tablet. Like, hey, look, there's this. Here's your brakes. This is what your brake pads are now. This is what it's supposed to look like when they're new. Pull up the little brake pad thing. Show them. So they understand what's going on with the car, and then you'll start getting more sales from it. But that's what a lot of shops will do, the cheap oil change for a couple months, and then they'll still spend an hour doing an oil change, and then they won't take the time to actually explain the ticket to the customer. They're just like, oh yeah, we got some recommendations on the bottom of the ticket. If you want to do it, just let us know. Click. It's $65, and swipe their card and send them on their way. That's not trying to present the work.
And no
you
no
know
one's smiling. It doesn't smell nice. No one's offered him a drink.
exactly. And then when the campaign goes on for 3 months and they don't, they see their average repair orders going down, and they see a whole bunch of just oil change only tickets, like, well, this didn't work, gotta do something else. Well, that's not really what happened. You didn't do the other things necessary to make it successful. you
Yeah.
know I did a full synthetic oil change for $27.77, and
Wow.
people would say I was crazy for it, because I
Yeah.
literally
That was
lost.
my first thought.
Yeah, I literally lost money, but that was one of the key things that took my shop from under $100,000 a month to consistently well over $200,000 a month.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Yeah, on each individual ticket, when the customer didn't buy anything, it was just an oil change ticket. If you hit the little graph, we use Techmetric. If you hit the little graph and pulled up the profitability report, yeah, it was negative because of how much money I paid my techs on every single one that was just an oil change. But at the end of the month, when my bank statement showed a whole bunch more money in the bank, and I looked at my P&L and it was an astronomical amount of money on the P&L for what we compared to what we used to do, I was like, okay, these oil changes are worth it. That proves it's worth it. But it came to the fact that, like, it was preparation. I mean, little things like, so we would take customers when they called as quick as possible. I mean, we were doing 35 to 50 cars a day. But when we had our schedule for the next day for the customers that called to come in the next day, we would write every single ticket the night before we left. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we closed at 5. 3 o'clock, we start writing all the tickets. We'd make sure we had every single oil filter. If we used a different type of oil that we didn't stock, we'd make sure we had the oil. We would have everything all together ready to go. So when the customer showed up, it wasn't, let me write you up. It was here, but before we went paperless, it was, here's your repair order. Does everything look right? Sign here. Obviously they were nicer, but you know what I mean? Like, it was like we were ready to go. The technicians knew exactly which cars they were going to get that morning. We'd have a morning meeting. They would know, okay, all right, Jimmy, you've got these 10 cars. Steve, you got these 7 cars. Stan, you've got these cars. They would know how many cars they've got, obviously pending any walk-ins, and what time they're coming in. And they would know. So like when we handed a repair order to you and said, hey, all right, Jimmy, here's this oil change and state inspection, and it's 8:45 in the morning, you'd know at 9:15 you've got another car coming in, so you got to bust your butt. And you would also know that you don't want to be doing nothing but oil changes all day long. So you need to make sure you do a good inspection on the car and not just pistol whip the inspection and send it up front. Because as the week went on, if work wasn't sold, you're going to be the guy that's on Friday that's doing 25 oil changes while the other guys are doing work.
Mm.
Because as their week got filled, we couldn't have them still do a bunch of oil changes. They had to do work.
So you only sold the jobs to the techs that wrote up the work,
Yeah, I mean,
and
yeah.
that
If a
kept
tech
them
wrote
in
the work,
their. I mean, kept them in their on the
yeah,
majority of the time, right? Kept them in their
yeah,
own
yeah.
lane.
We very rarely would we switch the job to a different tech after he wrote it up. So, but yeah, I mean, it's so it there, but and like I said, if the customer was waiting, we had to get them that quote fast. I mean, we couldn't sit there and have a customer waiting for an oil change for an hour and a half and then go tell them they need brakes. I mean, hell, if they wait for an hour and a half, you could barely get them to buy an air filter.
Yeah. Yeah. They're
You
ready to
know,
go.
yeah, they're like, hey, I got to get back to work. I gotta get my pick up my kid up from school, whatever it is. Like they got to go. So it had to be fast. I mean, we had little timers up, and when they finished their DVI, the technician would run up at one point. We changed the process over time, but the technician would run up, hit the timer, we got a little more digital, and that sped things up even more. But yeah, I mean, it's like we had our technicians could do an oil change with the full write up and the DVI and all that in under 20 minutes.
Wow.
And my techs were quoting all the work too. They were quoting the labor, quoting the parts, all that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if you get it down to a science, that's
yeah,
when it makes work. Do you think
yeah,
a lot of I mean, there's tons of coaching companies out there, right? Do you think a lot of
yeah,
them get stuck in the weeds with trying to make sure you have certain percentages versus looking at the shop? So I want to take it back to when you said you have to do the shop on-site visit, right? I
yeah,
really appreciate that. Like that really resonates with me because the company we were just recently with, after a year, they still asking us what town our shop's in. They're still
yeah,
asking us how many bays we have. They're still asking us
mhm,
the names of the techs, right?
yeah,
And I feel like to really do a good job, you have to be involved in the shop that you're coaching, right?
yeah.
Also what you said with the oil changes, it's like I don't know what you would call it. You're trying to track percentages, and that's how you get money in your account. But you do things like that where you're going all in the red, but your bank account's growing. So isn't that all that's really important?
I mean, yeah, obviously the bank account growing is important for sure. Yeah, but I mean, I think you need to pay attention to everything. I don't think it's
Yeah,
just tracking numbers.
right.
Um,
And I
so
guess my point was is like a lot of the time, it's real strict on making sure that your parts your parts GP's 55%, right? And that your labor is hitting your 60%, right? And like and if you don't hit these numbers, you're gonna fail, right? But there's like certain
yeah,
things you can do that really they'll negatively affect, say, your parts GP, but you're still have an overall gross profit that's phenomenal, right?
yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot of people get hung up on specific percentages, and it's different. I feel like in a sense, it's different for everyone. I mean, some shops will run a 60% gross profit, but then their overhead will be higher. Maybe the rent is three times the price as another shop that only runs a 50% gross profit, but their rent's way less money and they do the same revenue. So that shop that has a 50% gross profit actually makes more money. So that's one thing. So I don't really, at the end of the day, yeah, I have different percentages on a P&L, and I mean we could have a whole other call about what I think is other good percentages on a P&L, but um, that you should try to hit with different things. But at the end of the day, what's important is you know roughly how many dollars it costs to run that shop. You should know how much it costs to run your shop every single month in dollars. Forget percentages. How many dollars do I need to make to cover that? And then how many more dollars above that do I want to make in a month?
Hmm.
you know and that's really the way I like to try to look at it, is because you can't just, the percentages don't matter. That's not going to cover your rent. What's going to cover your rent is you making more money.
Yeah.
And that's the way I like to look at it.
Do you think that's an overwhelming concept for a lot?
Yes.
Because good answer.
Yes, 100%.
Right to the point. Yep, definitely 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I
because
agree with you. Yeah,
you start racking all this stuff up, right? And you're like, oh, it's $1,000 here, it's $800 a month here, it's $4,000 a month here, and then to actually see all that together, and it's like, oh, it cost me $18,000 to keep this place open every month.
yeah,
It's pretty daunting.
yeah. I think it's a lot easier for somebody, especially somebody that's already running around like a whirlwind, like a chicken with their head cut off. A lot of times, like a lot of shop owners are. I think it's a lot easier for them to say, all right, it's 46% of my sales is overhead, than for them to say it's $67,352.46.
Yeah, yeah. I
Well,
mean,
once they add it all up, I mean, because it can be overwhelming, for sure, because it's just such a higher number, and then you have to add all the things up. Where if percentage is just so much easier to look at.
yeah,
But you know, I feel like in a lot of instances, just looking at percentages can also hide things too when you're looking at, operations and profit. I mean, because I can't tell you how many times, like parts, for example, we were running really good parts margins, really good, parts margins were great. And, you know, but I sat there and I'm looking at it and I'm like, I feel like it should be better. And the guys were like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, we're making profit. I'm like, no, I feel like something should be better. So then I found that we had to have a better process on auditing and reconciling our bills. So then we ended up having somebody that reconciled the bill every single day. And we found that the parts stores, one specifically, which I won't mention who they are, were screwing up our bill all the time.
Hmm.
But our margins were accurate, or not accurate, but our margins were good. But we were literally leaving a couple $1,000s on the table every single month. A core here and there that they forgot to credit, or labor, they were forgetting labor claims. Labor claims weren't coming in accurate. All sorts of different things where like they were things that should have been credited the right way and would have made us make a lot more money. But the percentage looked good, so they weren't looking at it. And then when I saw that, I was like, holy crap, like we need to come up with a better process to make sure things are getting audited better, and that's how I fixed something, you know?
And that was all looking at raw numbers versus the percentages. I guess I'm
Yeah.
trying to wrap my head around exactly what. So
Yeah.
you're basically your resell on your parts was good, but you were actually missing the line item as far as the number when it came to the profit and loss.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah. So
kind of
the
right?
percentage looked good. And even technically, I guess the dollar amounts were good. But when I was looking at like the costs, like actually opened up the quick, when you go into QuickBooks and you click the percentage and it pulls up every single transaction. When I actually started looking at all the transactions, things were off.
Hmm.
And a lot of bigger shops, they have bookkeepers, that keep, but a lot of the smaller shops, they don't really, and it's unfortunate, but a lot of smaller shops don't get trained, don't really pay attention to that stuff that much.
Right.
I mean, they click order in their shop management system, and then when the bill comes, they pay it.
Right.
And then if their margin looks good, they don't think anything else.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so when I actually sat down and looked at it, I said, okay, we now I know that we need to audit it. So it's a whole heck of a lot easier, even at 50 cars a day. It's a whole lot easier to audit all those parts on a daily basis, which would sound daunting, but we had one employee that were able to shift some of the things they were doing, and they started auditing that. And they would audit the tickets every single night to make sure all the bills were right. And then so literally when the parts bill came, it wasn't like, oh, parts bill's here, let's pay it and hope that maybe everything's right, or take 3 weeks to pay it. It was like, okay, once the parts bill comes, we could just write a check because we already knew that everything was right up to that day.
Yeah.
And then, because things can fall through the cracks. I mean, think about it. I mean, how long have you been involved in shops for? I guess good question to ask
Me
for you.
personally,
Yeah.
uh, involved in shops in which way?
Like working in a shop, or like how
Oh,
long have you?
it's been close to 10 years now.
Okay. So that's a long time. I mean, but how many times throughout the day do parts come wrong? Do parts come that you don't need? Do you need to order more parts? Do parts have to get returned? It's all the freaking time.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So it's super easy at the end of the month, even if you audit at the end of the month, to have things fall through the cracks.
that's
So
true.
we started doing that throughout every single day, and it changed everything. It was saving thousands of dollars a month. It literally got to the point where I looked at it one month and I was like, we could have paid a whole other employee aside from the person that was doing it to do this, and we still would have came out ahead, which we didn't do because
Wow.
we had the system together. But
Right, right. Well, that's like the nuances of like trying to find what's wrong. Right, when people ask you, why am I not making money? And it's like
yeah,
there's the microscope that you just look through, right? Like that one thing right there just pulled in another 2 or 3 grand a month,
hmm,
right? But what else? What other things are we missing?
yeah,
and
there's
and
so
how,
many.
and then then you can sit here and you can listen to this podcast. You can like have a talk with you or talk to anybody, and they'll tell
Yeah,
you these things and these stories, and then you show up to the shop the next day and you do absolutely none of it because no, like literally no one's holding you accountable, right? Like so
yeah.
even if you learn and and someone tells you about this stuff, it's like no one holds you accountable for it. You know what I mean?
Can we pause this for two
Oh
seconds?
sure, yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll edit this from.
Okay.
We don't have to pause anything. I'll just edit it on the other side.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, no worries.
No, it's okay. He's recording. He's gonna edit it afterwards. So.
Okay, I just need my laptop.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not. We're not live, so it's all good.
Okay.
It's no big deal. That's what you have editing for, I guess.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. I think for owners of shops, one big thing, man, is you're in it all day long. That it's very hard to like step back and look at everything from above. You know. And so that's why, like, I feel like every single shop or business owner should have a coach, whether it's somebody that they pay or like just another business owner that they know that's going to give them unfiltered, no BS, like opinions on things when they look at what's going on to really help them evaluate things. Cause there's so many things that can be uncovered when someone else is looking at it other than you, cause you're just in it, you know?
Yeah, or just actually doing it and like
Yeah.
having someone tell you, did you look at that yet? Have you gone through your parts? Uh, oh, what's the word? Reconciliation. Have you have you done it yet? Did you?
Yeah.
No, I haven't done it. I haven't done it. Like third or fourth times. Like, all right, I'll freaking do it. Right. Like, find the
Yeah.
holes. Right. Plug the holes is all you can
Exactly.
do from that stuff. So with
Yeah.
your style of coaching, I want to kind of go back to that a little bit because I really like the uniqueness that you bring to the table with that stuff. So you like
Mm.
to get in there, get involved right away, and then moving forward, how does that process work, and what is it that you really focus on as far as helping shops? Is it really custom tailored to what you find in that first visit, or what
Yeah.
what is it you like to really dig into?
Yeah. So it really, I mean,
I know it's a
I love
vague
systems.
question, but
Yeah, I know it's fine. It's not a big deal. So I mean, I love systems. I love procedures and all that type of stuff, and make a shop real smooth. So that's obviously something that no matter what we're working on, I try to like piece in to it to help make a shop run smooth. But really, I mean, I don't have a given curriculum for because I do stuff with service advisors and with owners, and I don't have a given curriculum for anything. It literally it is most of it, 90% of it is tailored off of when I go to the shop. I don't want to get too involved into saying exactly what I do because I don't want to give stuff away because like we do some like not sneaky, but we do some like recon work on the shop before we get there.
sure.
But we do some investigating in the shop.
Secret shopper stuff.
Yes, it kind of, yeah. But we do some of that type of stuff, and we go to the shop and we do a full on evaluation and look at things, and beforehand we find out like what the shop owner's goal is, like what is it that they want, what success, like you said before, what success look like to them. Is success for you, making you know $30,000 a month in net and working 20 hours a week? Is success for you making $100,000 a month in net and working bell to bell, open to close all day long? Like, do you not care about working? You just want to make as much money as possible. Like, what success look like? So we can try to come up with a plan on what we need to do. And that's part of that is also where the numbers come in because when they talk about how much money they want to make, we then sit down and look at like where their average sales per hour are, what their gross profit per hour is, and how many lifts they have. So how many techs they need, how many, and how many cars they need to get based on the numbers that they have come, right now to get to the numbers that they want to be at. But we sit down and we tailor the plan and say, okay, cool. Here's what we're going to do. I try to do like the initial, like no more than 10 things that we're going to try to knock out in the beginning. But sometimes I've gone as high as like 15 to 20 if there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen to get them, if they want to do it quicker. So I'll say, all right, these are the items that we're going to do. We're going to start with these ones. And a lot of times, unless it's a glaring thing that I'm like, you need to fix this first, a lot of times I talk to the person, I have them pick what they want to do first. Because really, in most cases, a lot of the guys, they just need a win. They need to figure out what they need to do and they need to actually achieve it and kind of get that pat on the back, like, all right, I won. I made something happen for several reasons, for their ego and for their mindset, and then also for their employees. Because when you have a shop that's failing, the employees, like, they need to see that, hey, Jimmy can make it happen. If they see, all right, Jimmy said that we're going to do XYZ and we actually did it, then they'll start building more confidence in the owner and see them as a leader and start following them, and all the other things you try to do, they'll be easier to accomplish
Hmm,
when you have your
smart.
team behind you.
Yeah.
So, so we come up with that plan and we say, okay, here's the things you're going to do. You're going to start with this. This is the one you decided on. So they start with this. So it might be 2 items. So we'll have a call and we'll say, all right, this is what we're going to do. You're starting with these items. So then cool. And then unless they have any other questions until our next call, we don't really talk. They might pop in and say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And then we get on the next call, and literally it's funny, I've had calls last like 3.5 minutes because we get on the next call, like, hey, how's it going? They'll spend a minute or two, tell me what's been going on with them, and I'm like, all right, Jimmy, so on our last call we said that you were going to do X and Y. How's it going with that? And then one of two things happens: either they start saying, man, I killed it, I started doing this or that, or they start trying to tell you a story.
Or
And
yep.
once it's story time, you know that they didn't do a damn thing. And then sometimes I let them tell me the whole story, and then sometimes like, all right, man, listen, Jimmy, we're not going to do anything else until you can get these things finished, because we're trying to build a pyramid here to get to the top, and we can't build a pyramid straight up. It has to be built out and then go up from here. So you got to start putting these blocks down, and once these blocks are down, we can move to the next ones. Then we hop off the phone. Um, Almost every time that happens, the next call, they usually ask to have it earlier than they originally scheduled it, and they did the things they were supposed to do, and usually did one more item after that, because they're like, well, crap, I'm paying this guy, and I literally had him on the phone for 3 minutes. Like, so they're kind of mad at me because they didn't get their money's worth for the call, but they really did get their money's worth because they got off the phone and I kicked them in the ass and they went and did what they were supposed to do. You know, um, so like I tell them, like, hey, like, you're not paying me to be your friend, you're paying me to help you fix whatever it is you want to fix.
Yeah.
So we need to do it. And if you're not, somebody has to hold you accountable. So, um, but yeah, it's kind of like the style, and some people like it, some people don't. Some people, they want a cheerleader, and they want, somebody that's going to stand there and say good job and pat them on the back, and there's a time for that, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not always mean or anything like that, but I feel like from a training and a coaching aspect, a lot of those, like, hey, I'm just going to pat you on the back every time we get on the phone, and celebrate something, even if it's not necessarily a win. Those are the people that don't really help shops improve, is my opinion. A lot of those type of people, like, you need to, like, kick somebody in the ass sometimes, and a lot of people that look for coaching for the first time, that's what they need, you know
What would you say to play the devil's advocate if you had someone that said, "Well, if they're paying me for a program, I can't force them to do anything." Right? So
Yeah.
if a client was to come in and pay you, and now you feel obligated to keep them as a client, right? And it's like, "Well, if they're paying me for my program, how do I force them to do anything?"
Yeah, so if you go to my website, you can't sign up for my program on my website. And the reason for that is the way I do things doesn't work for everybody, and that's fine, because, like I said earlier, like, yeah, like, I want to make money, right? Who doesn't? But that's not why I'm helping people. I'm helping people because I want to actually help them. So I don't want to just collect money from somebody, every single week, every single month, or whatever. And just because, like, I want to do that and actually help them. So if they're not, if it, I, when we have like an entrance, like a interview call, and when we go through that call, I tell them, I literally tell them a lot of times what my style is. I'll say, hey, this is how I do things. We're gonna do a shop visit. And it's not an astronomical amount of money like the other places charge for shop visits. Obviously you have to pay for my time and the flights and all that stuff, but it's not crazy. But we're gonna have a shop visit, and we're gonna go through a plan. And when we put this plan together, we're gonna execute it. And if we don't execute it, I'm gonna ask you why, and we're not gonna move forward. Like, the only way we move forward is finishing items. So if that's not something you're okay with to get to where you want to be, then this isn't gonna work. And I don't say that portion until somebody usually gives me a rebuttal and says, oh, well, what if I don't like it or whatever. Obviously at the end of the day, it's their business, they can do what they want. But that's why after the shop visit, we have like almost like essentially like a brainstorming coaching session, and I go through all the things we found, and I tell them what I suggest, and then we come to an agreement on that call. So they might not like my idea on how if we have 10 items, and maybe they like how I want to fix 8 of them, but the other 2 they don't like. We brainstorm together on what could be a good idea to do. Because it's not like I said, I don't have a curriculum. It's not like I'm teaching out of this and like, this is the one way you have to do it. So if they don't like how I say to do something, we say, okay, well, let's figure something out. Well, and we'll bounce things off of each other. And then at the end of that call, we say, okay, these are the things that we're going to fix, and this is how we're going to fix them. You agree to it, right? So they've already agreed
Hmm.
by the time we get past that shop visit and the next call, how it's going to be done.
Do you have like a graduation, or what's the your term length?
So
what is a fair amount of time you want to see them in the program before you can send them out on their own?
the graduation's at their funeral. No, just kidding. Just kidding.
Fair enough.
um,
Lifers, if I can get them right.
no, just kidding. But I don't really have anything like that now. I just built out the beginnings of like an online course. So that'll have like a graduation type thing. But I mean, truthfully, I mean, like, even if I was in a program, like, I would feel like I never graduate. Like, you never, because there's always more to learn.
That's true.
It's
Yeah.
like it's not just like, oh, this is a magic bullet and it's fixed. The industry is always changing, and coaching, there's a lot to it. There's mindset, there's leadership. I mean, you're a therapist too at the same time. There's so many different things outside of the shop. So it's an ongoing thing, and there may be a point where somebody's gotten to the point where they say, hey, listen, like, I think everything with you has been great, but I need to try to do something different. And because that happens with people, they need somebody different. So maybe they need, like, we have a few coaches, so maybe I have to put them with a different one of our coaches. Um, or whatever the case may be. But I don't really think that there is a graduation for anybody. I
Yeah, I
mean,
guess
because
that was a poor question as far as what I was thinking. So one of the things I've always heard, or I've heard lately, is in coaching programs, is a sick patient is a good patient, right? And I think a lot of people get stuck in like a coaching program, um, and they don't know how to get out of it, right?
yeah,
Or it's like going to a doctor, and every time you go to the doctor, they give you something that makes you feel better, right? But you
mhm,
never get cured, right?
yeah,
So they're treating the symptom instead of solving the problem. And I'm
yep,
not by any means saying that's what you're doing, but so
yeah,
in that kind of mindset, you always kind of want to say, well, how long should I be in this program before I see the results that I need to see? And obviously, it's
yeah,
not ever changing, and we're
yeah,
students. Every day is a learning day, right? But
yeah,
so sometimes this gets a little stagnant. It's like, so what are we doing here? What's the next step?
yeah. Yeah. So, well, a few things with that. One, I mean, like, sometimes, if somebody's got their shop together, they've got their life together. I mean, maybe it's not they need coaching anymore. Maybe at that point they just need to be in some type of a program, almost like a 20 group type deal, where it's just, you actively stay involved with other shops so you can still keep trying to grow, and
So,
or they
and
get
sorry to
called.
cut you off, but do you think the 20 group, so 20 group would be like that's like the high end, that's like where you, I guess, would graduate to, right? That's like the end of the
in,
line.
in
Yeah.
a sense, yeah. I mean, because at that point, there's some groups out there, and we're probably going to have one in the future. And it would most likely be like a free or a low cost thing when we do it, because it's really just going to be like a community for shops once they've hit a certain level and they don't really need help
That makes sense. Yeah.
consistently anymore. And I mean, I'm also, for me, if you, like, say you were a shop with me and you were with me for a year, 2 years, whatever it is, and then you said, hey, like, I don't think I really need coaching anymore. Okay, cool, Jimmy, no problem. And then if you call me in 6 weeks or 6 months and say, hey, man, what's going on with this? I'm like, no, you got to sign back up for the program. I'm not talking to you. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what's gonna happen. I'm gonna say, all right, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
um,
Probably the
so
fourth or fifth call is like, are we gonna keep doing
uh,
this?
yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe. I mean, if it got to the point where you're texting me every day, but yeah, I mean, I definitely don't want to see people be a sick patient all the time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I want to see people get better, but at the same time, a lot of people, like, when you own a business, the hard thing for people to understand is you're your own boss. Now, you think they'd understand it, but, like, when you work for somebody, you've always, no matter, even if you're the manager, you've got that person that's above you to tell you, hey, Jimmy, you screwed up with this. But when you own your own business, you usually don't have that, unless you're married and your wife is heavily involved in the business or something like that. I've seen that before, where the wife will yell at the husband all the time, but a lot of times the husband doesn't listen to the wife, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
you know, um,
It's the negative Google reviews that are your boss, I guess. I
yeah,
don't
but a
know.
lot of times they don't really handle them the right way. So I feel like a lot of people will want to stick with some type of a coaching program in general. You know, it'll be positive for them just because they're going to have that person, if it's the right type of coach or person, that can help be that second set of eyes and that second set of ears to help listen and help them say, like, when they don't know what they're supposed to do, like, hey, where do I go from here?
Mm.
And I think that's more like when the people graduate from needing, like, coaching, because like, when somebody first starts working with me, I mean, even though we say we have, like, 2 calls a month, I might have 6 or 7 calls in a month with somebody, and then a couple months in, I might talk to them once a month. Because they don't need as much conversation. It's, hey, like, they're out there just knocking stuff out and doing things. But in the beginning, it's like, all right, I took 3 steps. Now what do I do next? And so it's kind of like a progression period.
What do you see as far as your own personal win for them as a shop grows? Is there a certain like income that they get to that you're like, all right, I got this shop in a good place, and you start thinking about maybe it's time for you to go to like a 20 group, or maybe I've kind of hit my limit. Is there a number there for you?
there's not really a finite number. Oh, for me, a lot of it is, like I said, we come up with what their goals are, and then when somebody's hit all of their goals, and then we start trying to come up with more goals, and then if the goals they're trying to come up with after they hit all their goals are like crazy, like to the moon goals, which I love. I mean, I think that's awesome to have things like that. But if they have like huge goals, and I'm like, you're gonna hit these things no matter what. Like if I sit there and look at things that they come up with next that they want to do, and it's like something insane, like I want to make this amount, $150,000 in a week. I'm like, well, dude, you're probably gonna do that in 3 months, like without me even telling you anything. Like that's kind of like, and I'm not saying it's $150,000 a week. I'm just saying like if their
Yeah.
goals are so insane that you would sound crazy to a normal person, that the people that think $1 million a year for a shop is like the end all be all, in revenue. If the goal is crazy and it's like, yeah, I know he's gonna hit that. I know Jimmy's gonna do that, and I don't even need to do anything. I could just say, hey, go ahead and do it. You'll make it happen, and it happens. Then I know that they really don't need consistent coaching every day
Hmm.
or every week or whatever.
Okay, so you measure it based on their own performance and their own goals, really. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny you brought that up because I definitely thought $1 million a year was the end all be all. Like that was my goal for the first 5 years, right? And then once you hit it, you're like, well, if you subtract inflation, right, it's like, well, we've just basically kept pace
Yeah. Yeah. It's
compared to
it's like
2018 to now. Like 600,000 or 700,000 back in 2018 is a million now. So it's like, oh, cool. But I think it's
exactly.
still a feat in its own.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, having $1 million business is, but it's like, for the first several years, it was like, all right, $83,333.33. Like, like that's what
That's
I kept telling myself. That's what I need to do. That's what I need to do.
It's funny. It's right on my wall. $19,230 a week, or $2,739 a day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Sitting right on
yeah,
the
exactly.
wall.
That was the thing. And then, I remember the first time, like, I couldn't hit the 80 grand in a month. It was like, and this is probably a little off base. I'm sorry, but
No, no,
I,
no.
I spent so long. I couldn't hit. I couldn't hit. I couldn't hit it. And we had one day where in the same week we did $1,000, and we did $10,000 in the same week. And this is also at the same time when I started learning how to like fix processes in the shop. But can you guess which day seemed busier?
I would assume that the $1,000 day was pretty damn busy, and everything left the next day.
Well, no, what I mean is like we sold 1,000 one day and sold 10,000, not completed, like physically sold.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So the day we sold a grand seemed like the craziest, busiest day ever. And then I went and looked at the numbers we sold. I was like, dude, what the hell? And then
Huh.
we sold $10,000, and it was like smooth. It was like the key was in the door at 5:01, locking the door. We're going home, and then that's when I realized I was like, holy crap! Like I need to like really like this thing needs to be like coin operated. Like everything needs a step, And then but that week we did 25 grand that week, and it was the first week of the month, and we'd never done 80 grand. 72 or something like that at the time was our record. And I turned to my manager and I said, dude, we've never done 80 grand a month. He said, I know. And I was like, we're gonna do 100 grand this month. And he was like, we're here, we might as well, right? and we buckled down, and we focused, and we started really digging into how we were doing things throughout the day, and trying to shorten the time it took to do things, and all that stuff, and focusing, and when things seemed crazy, we'd take a step back and slow down and say, all right, let's not rush through it. Let's, because not that slow and steady wins the race, but sometimes we run around too fast and just start screwing shit up like a bull in a china shop, like the Tasmanian devil.
Yeah.
And we did 20, we did 25 grand, and then I think the next week we did like 28. Week before that was, week after that was a little slower, and we ended up finishing like 107,000 that month. And then we never turned back. We never looked back after that. And things just kept improving, and we kept, and there was a lot of factors in it, but it was, that month is when I realized that, like, and we had never done $1 million in a year either. I was like, a million is like nothing. I was like, a million sounds great, but like that's just what people say. Like, and I started doing math, and I'm like, all right, I've got this amount of lifts. This is what our average ticket is. I was like, holy crap! If we do this many cars, we could do 1.5 million, 2 million. Hell, we could probably do three. And then I was like, this is insane. And that like opened my eyes. It was like that explosion where you're like, holy crap! Like you could see everything. I don't know if you
Yeah.
ever saw that movie with Bradley Cooper, Limitless,
Yeah.
when he takes the pill, and all of a sudden it's like I can see everything.
The veil's been
It was,
removed.
yeah. So But
Yeah,
yeah, it's
it's quite amazing once you hit that. It becomes natural after that, right? And you're like, you set these bars and you hit that 100,000 in that month, but you never quite. It never goes. I mean, it does. Like it goes back, but
yeah,
your own personal standards are like have been leveled up in a sense, and you're just not okay with like an $80,000 a month or a
yeah,
$90,000 a month, right? Which
yep,
at one point was like your standard, right? You're like
yeah,
you're sitting there doing 60K a month, and you're like 90,000 a hunt. There's no way, right? And you have
yeah,
like this metaphorical ceiling, and it's just such a bizarre feeling to like literally break through that ceiling and then
yep,
realize like you said, then your mind's opened up and you're like, oh man, like
yeah,
we can do more. It's not
yeah,
just me.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and really, I mean, though I like to always say that like your ceiling should be like ever changing. It should be like you should get through your ceiling, and then now there's another ceiling up there. Let's try to get to that one.
Mm.
And sometimes it's cool to like get through your ceiling and hit a goal and hang out there for a little bit. Like I'm not saying things always need to be like push, 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 but like I don't feel like you should ever try to stay stagnant and just stay at that ceiling level, and you should always try to go up at some point.
That brings
Um,
up a good point as far as like building and progressing, and this is probably something that you've seen is when shops get to that point and they get too big too fast. That's also another one of those idiosms that we hear a lot, right? Same with the whole a sick patient's a good patient, like stuff like this that really scares shop owners to like for one sign up with a coach and then two to grow, right? Because they're
yeah.
so afraid of growing too big too fast and then losing everything. Because that's like
Oh
one of
yeah,
those things you hear, right? Do you ever
yeah.
actually see that? Do you ever see someone actually move through those steps too fast to actually create a house of cards?
Yeah, so I've had friends of mine that have done it. Nobody that I've personally worked with, but I've seen people go from doing like 15, 20, $25,000 in a month to doing 150K plus and not building the foundation below it, and then it just crumbling and then drop. There's a guy I know that he had a shop that weren't doing a lot. They got up to 150 to $180,000 a month, and he didn't have the right staff. He didn't have the right leadership. He wasn't able to actually lead his shop. And because even though they were doing big numbers, the place was still chaotic. So
Mm,
like for example, in my shop, when things started getting busier and busier and busier, we were getting busier, but as we were getting busier, we were building that foundation and making things smoother. So it got to the point where like we sold $34,000 in a day once, and it was like nothing. It was like, holy crap, this is like easy, right? And where some people would struggle to do that in a week,
yeah.
but we would, and we sold it in a day, and it was like nothing. It was just smoother, smoother, smoother. So this, and with that, my guys, I could go in and tell them we're going to do $600,000 in a month, and they would believe me. Even if I didn't even think it was possible, they would believe me and do everything they possibly could to do it, because every time we did the next level, it was easier. And they had faith and they believed, and believing in something is one of the biggest things that makes it happen. Being able to manifest it and have that faith in it. But back to the guy that everything crumbled on him. So he got to like 150, $180,000 a month, but he hadn't built that foundation. His guys didn't have faith in him, all that stuff. And one of the biggest reasons why he did that amount of money is he was doing a bunch of marketing, and he had one guy that was really, really good at quoting and looking over cars, and but couldn't do all the work. So that one guy was doing like most of the inspections and most of those DVIs and all that stuff. He'd be working on a car, and one of the guys would come over and say, "Hey man, come look at this," and he'd look at the car, help write him up. And that guy got pissed because he was making great money, but everybody else that was not really that good of a technician was making really good money too, and he felt like he was carrying everything. And somebody heard about him, whether it was, I think might have been through the Snap-on truck or something like that. Somebody heard about how good of a technician he was, and another shop scooped him up.
Mm,
And this guy wasn't constantly trying to recruit. And me, I could have a technician on every single lift, and I'm still interviewing technicians. And my texts are like, "What the hell are you doing, dude? Like, we had no room for him." I'm like, "Listen, you never know what's gonna happen." I was like, "Maybe we get another location one day." I was like, "If we find an amazing technician, I'll pour a concrete pad out back and put a roof over it if I need to." you know, but you always need to be trying to plan the future, no matter what it is. You never know. I mean, and I said it's not even necessarily because they would say, "Oh, well, what are you just going to fire one of us?" No, you never know. Your wife might get a promotion at work and say, "Yeah, move halfway across the country, but you got to do it in 60 days."
yeah.
And she might get a promotion, make it twice as much money as you. So you do it. And then if that happens with you, then we're screwed. So I
Yeah.
need to be planning for I need to be planning for that,
Yeah.
And this guy didn't do any of that, so he had no potential technicians in the pipeline, no nothing. This guy left. That tech was quoting like $2,000 a ticket. The other guys couldn't even quote $500-600 a ticket. So his average quote dropped. His average RO dropped. So he was just doing a ridiculous amount of oil changes. He took too long to dial the marketing back while he was trying to find another technician. So he was just doing oil change after oil change after oil change, and the guys weren't quoting things. So next thing you know, he's doing 60 grand a month
Mm.
because he didn't build the foundation around it.
Wow. Yeah, that's the horror stories that scares everybody, I think.
Yeah,
But I mean, it's good to know the nuances, right? Because that's important. You just hear the
yeah,
stuff, you let it sit in your brain, then you go home and you can't sleep at night, and you're just like,
yeah,
"Oh man, I'm gonna lose everything, aren't I?" Like,
yeah,
no, just relax.
yeah, exactly. Just chill out. But yeah, and growth. That's one of the reasons what like the way I've got my business structured in the different platforms is like so for the coaching, I'm not going to take a lot of coaching clients. I mean, because the type of service we provide is not sustainable if I've got 1,000, 2,000 clients under that I'm coaching. Between if I have 40 coaches, it's not sustainable because I'm not going to find 40, 50 people that have the same mentality that I have that I'm going to be able to manage and make sure that they're doing things the same way that I would to help the shops and give them that personal service, that tailored plan. So for the coaching, we have to keep it on a little more personal and like exclusive level. Whereas like the service advising thing that we're doing, the remote service advising, um, that we started getting big. We just got a partnership agreement with a large distributor where we're selling engines and transmissions for their clients for free, and I saw how big that this was starting to get, and I said, well, we need to figure out how to scale this, and that I found was scalable because every single amazing service writer wants to work from home. So I'm able to recruit great service writers, and then we have our calls recorded so that we can manage and we can scale. So we've decided to scale that part of the business quicker and larger than the other part of the business, and it's similar to in a shop. So because I could have very easily gotten to the point where we've gotten several thousand shops that we're doing remote service advisor for, but if we didn't scale it properly and grow it properly, it would crumble, just like that guy's shop did. But we've been building it the right way, and it's we have a strong foundation with a bench. I mean, I've got about another 20 or 30 service advisors that are ready to come in once we need them as that grows.
Wow.
So
Yeah, that's an interesting concept too, because you sell something and then they come into the shop and then the person's not at the shop that they were talking to. I don't know. I mean, obviously, anything in this day and age, anything can work, and everything. Everybody's into the digital age, right? But
yeah,
I find that intriguing. For that purpose, is like you want to go in and like talk to the person that you've been talking to on the phone. You go there, and the keys are just handed over to you, I guess, by the whoever's on staff, right? I don't know.
yeah. So we have a very specific process in which we do it. I won't get into everything, but like one of the things is when the customer comes in, they drop their car off, and then like so, for example, say you're the service advisor at the shop, and I say I'm the remote advisor, that calls you. So when I call you, I'll say, when I call the customer, I'll say, hey, how's it going? My name is Phil. I'm with Bob's Auto Repair. I know you were dealing with Jimmy. Jimmy gave me your repair order. Technicians got everything. Did the diagnostic on your car, test your vehicle out. We know what's going on with it. Is now a good time to talk. So I connect. Obviously, I say I'm from the shop. I connect your name so they know that me and you know each other. So that I've already kind of showed them like, hey, like I'm not just some like call center guy, and also our people are American people. It's not like we've got like a bunch of people overseas making phone calls. I mean, we have like real service providers that have worked in shops for years too. So
Yeah,
so there's that piece. Then they go through the ticket with them, and they but they make sure they try to build that personal relationship, and we usually have them take the beginning of the call to kind of just ask them about their day, talk to them a little bit, try to connect on a level, you know try to see if maybe they've had the same type of car the customer has, or they know somebody with the car, so try to try to build some type of rapport,
yeah,
you know, and then they'll try to follow up with them one or two other times throughout the repair process, depending on what they're going to get done, and then when they pick it up, we usually have that advisor call them and say, hey, your car is ready for pickup. You can go. Jimmy will have the keys ready for you at the shop. So they're not expected to come back and talk to Phil. They're expected to come back and talk to Jimmy because Phil's already told them Jimmy's gonna have the keys ready for you.
It's interesting. Yeah.
So, and in the beginning, I heard a lot of people try to do it in the past, and it failed. And I was like, how can I do this to make it work? And I came up with a lot of different things and tried stuff. It was me on my own trying to do sales in the beginning. And, I had customers, that got pissed at one point, I figured out how I needed to, make that connection to where it was like, all right, it doesn't seem like I'm just in a call center type deal. And, I mean, I have a shop that I personally sold 200 grand for in 1 month, um, from my living room.
It's
So
interesting.
it,
Well,
it, it
I guess
works.
you have to have, as long as you have the processes so the technicians are writing good notes, taking good
Yep,
pictures.
that's key. The
Yeah.
techs have to write good notes, and obviously, and don't get me wrong, there's some times where we have to call and talk to the tech or get the advisor back on the phone, because we need that stuff, and that happens. But at this, really, as long as the shop is picking up the phone when you call, there's not much difference in picking up the phone and calling the advisor and having to hand the phone to the tech than there is as the advisor, if you're the advisor in the store, walking outside and talking to the tech. It takes an extra 30 seconds
Well, but
to do that.
we
So
lost
if
that
you
part. It
have to,
cut
but
out on me.
we usually in the oh, I said it doesn't take too much more time for a technician to get on the phone with the remote advisor than it would for a regular advisor to walk out in the shop
Oh,
and
right,
talk.
right, right. And go find the tech wherever he's at,
Yeah, and
in
so
the
it's
bathroom or out back or wherever they go.
yeah,
No.
exactly.
Shots fired to the
But
technicians.
but yeah, the notes are super important. There needs to be good notes on the ticket, and it. But it works. One of the big things is a lot of advisors get scared to sell big tickets. They think the car is not worth it, or they look at the car as like, oh well, this is a $3,000 car, Kelly Blue Book, and it needs an engine. Customer's never going to fix it. It's not unethical to explain the value in what you're doing. And sometimes, yeah, it might not be worth it to fix it, but that's up to the customer to decide. I
Right.
mean, I have a perfect story of this lady. She had a 1999 Toyota Camry. Um, Sweet old lady. Her name was Kathy. She's like 90 years old, and if you look at that car right now, it's probably worth $800. I mean, at this point now, it's probably got 300,000 miles on it. And she came in, and the first time she came in, she spent like $1,000. And then next thing I know, 6 months later, this woman's put like 9 grand in this car. And one of my advisors is like, dude, what is going on? Like, why is she spending this money on this car? So I go down, I sit down in the office with her, and we've got a couch, and I sit down. I'm like, all right, Miss Kathy. I'm like, here's what's going on with your car. And I tell her, I go through the whole thing with her, and I say, you know, you spent about 9 grand on this car this year. And she's like, I know. She's like, are you telling me you're not going to fix my car anymore like the last shop did? And I kind of got stepped back. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well, I was taking it to another shop, and they told me I was spending too much money on my car. And she's like, so I stopped going there because they said my car wasn't worth it. And I asked her, I was like, well, why is it that you're spending this money on this car? And she said, well, I'm 80 whatever years old at the time she was. She's like, I bought this car brand new. I'm only going to be alive so much longer. I don't want another car payment. She's like, so I'm just going to keep paying to fix this one so I don't have to go buy another car for 30 grand. I was like, all right, it's a little morbid, but at the end of the day,
She's not wrong.
she's not wrong. And there's a lot of there's a lot of things come into play here. The advisor is not the one that's paying for the car.
Right.
So they don't know why the customer has the car. They don't know why the customer wants to keep the car, or if they want to keep it. And also, every car has got a payment on it. You know what I mean? So do you want to have a monthly car payment that's $3, $4, $5, $6, $800 a month that and it's a newer car, or do you want to have or a used car? Do you want your car that's that the history to it, that your grandmother drove, your aunt drove, whatever? There's a lot of factors that come into play, on that from a personal side, and then also, you know, cars are not really assets. I mean, they're tools. I mean, very rarely does a car actually appreciate. I mean,
Right.
usually cars depreciate in value. I mean, unless it's a classic car, unless it's 2020 again, but
Yeah. 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 Right.
but you usually, you buy a car, and then the second you leave the dealership, whether it's new or used, it's worth less than it was when you left the dealership, same day. 9 out of 10 times. What it is you buy a car because you've got kids, you got to get to school, you got to get to work, you got to go to the doctor, you got to do this, you got to do whatever it is. That's why you have your car, and you're paying for it for that. So you're paying for, essentially, you're paying your car for a service. You're paying your car to take you places, So, and that's kind of the mentality that I train my guys with. And like, hey, that's the reason why people have cars. 90% of the people that you're your everyday daily drivers. So we need to figure out, do they want to, is it just that they want a new car, or do they not understand the fact that from a financial aspect, like that car is not going to be, it doesn't matter. Like if you take a car and you put $5,000 into it and it's not going to make it worth more money, that's true.
Yeah,
But
it's not
also
worth
when you go buy a
5,000 more
car from,
dollars, right?
yeah, but when you go buy a car from the dealership and you're making the payments on that car, it's not making the car worth more money either.
Right.
It's the same exact thing. That car, you're paying for that car to take you places.
And you
So
still
which
got
way
to
do you want to
maintain
go?
and do repairs on the new car too.
Exactly. And a lot of times it's a customer talking about buying it, either keep fixing their car or buying a used car. If they want to buy a brand new car, that's a whole different story. But if they're talking about buying a used car, I mean, 9 out of 10 times the amount of money they're gonna have to pay to fix their car that they already have, or buy the used car, they're gonna pay less money to fix the car that they already got.
Yeah.
And then they know the history. It's not a question mark like a used car would be. Yeah, we've got Carfax and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, you don't really know. Carfax doesn't tell you if when Jimmy had that Toyota Camry, he put the pedal down to the floorboard every time the light turned green.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know.
Yeah, or
So
when the
there's
oil, or how many oil changes, if there were. I mean,
yeah,
who knows?
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
there's
I mean,
too many unknowns.
there's too much with it. And so a lot of advisors they make the decision for the customer in their own head, whether it's worth it for the customer to fix the car.
That's true.
And those larger tickets go unsold all the time. And most of the time, a customer will leave the shop, and then they'll end up getting it fixed somewhere else anyway.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times in the past I've at other people's shops, and even in my own shop in the beginning years, I saw a car leave that needed an engine or a transmission, and 6 months later came back for an oil change with a bright shiny engine in there. And you pull the cabin air filter, and a receipt happens to fall out of the glove box, and you see the receipt for the engine, uh, and the engine was the same price or more money than you were going to charge them.
Yeah.
Just the other shop did a better job at explaining to them why it was worth it.
That's
You
true.
know,
It,
and
it,
so,
it it's a strange concept because I mean, obviously they're not either being, and I hate incentivizing an advisor on based on what they're selling, but I mean that's what it's got to be, right? It's got to be a win-win for everybody.
yeah,
And what I mean for everybody is the advisor needs to get their pay to present that information, and the client needs to have that information presented to them so they can make an informed decision, right?
yeah,
Like that's a win-win for everybody. Like cuz like you said, if not, then they're just going to go down the road to the next one and you're
yeah,
not doing your job. And
mhm,
yeah, it's interesting, but that's why you're there, right? Like that's your job as far as being at the shop and answering and being an advisor, being a technician. Like you're there to find problems with cars. We didn't
yeah,
buy it, we didn't break it. So don't bitch at me about it, huh?
yeah. But yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean they're doing the customer a disservice by not presenting the work to the customer, and not explaining to them what the car needs.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that. And it's very easy for a customer to feel like they've been ripped off, or lied to, if they were told that the car didn't need anything and they drive down the road and the car breaks, than if they were told that they did need something and it really didn't. It's almost the same thing in a sense,
Yeah.
by withholding stuff that the car needs.
Yep.
You know.
Absolutely. Well, Phil, this has been quite insightful. And if anybody wants to find you, where do they look you up? How do they find you?
Yeah, so we've got a Facebook and website. They go look us up on Facebook. It's My Shop Rescue. Our website's myshoprescue.com.
And that's
Like I said, the
my
the
my
biggest thing,
shop rescue.
My Shop Rescue.
Like
Yep,
you need to be rescued. Yeah.
myshoprescue.com.
That makes sense. I like that.
Yeah, and right now, and I can say it because it's a public thing now. We partner with Go Powertrain. They do engines and transmissions and differentials, transfer cases, all that. So if there's any shops really anywhere in the country that uses them, but we're focused on North Carolina right now, that want to try out the remote advisor, I mean they can do it risk free because Go Powertrain's paying for us to sell engines and transmissions for their shops. So, which is it's an awesome thing. I mean, they
That is
saw that
cool.
advisors struggle to sell the repairs, so we came in and we said, hey, we're gonna help your shop sell it, so they can sign on with us for free to try it out, and then any shop for the remote advisor portion. I mean, I'll go and I'll present a ticket for them for any shop as like a demo for them to see what the difference is and see how we do it.
That's awesome.
So,
Well, cool, man. Appreciate your time and all
Yeah, of
your
course.
insight.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks a lot, man. Hope you have a great night and talk to you soon.